During the pandemic lockdown in 2020, I binged Chris McFeely's excellent Transformers the Basics series. In doing so, I learned about the legal history of the original Jetfire toy, which was originally from the show Super Dimensional Fortress Macross. Out of curiosity, I checked out the old anime and fell in love with the Macross Valkyrie design. I wanted a Macross Valkyrie toy, but most modern merch is expensive high-end collectibles with complex bells and whistles. I wanted something both more in my budget and durable enough so I could play with it without worrying about breaking it. This is what drew me to collecting Jetfire toys. Each one is reminiscent of the original Valkyrie, but take their own interesting spins on it. So I admit, I have no real emotional attachment to Jetfire as a character, but I find the character's toy history really interesting. Today, I want to talk about all of the figures I have collected so far. Jetfire retrospective. I don't have them all, but I think I have quite a few. The first toy I want to talk about is the Happywell Xbox GS11, a relatively recent knockoff of the original 1982 Macross Valkyrie toy that would go on to become Jetfire. I totally understand why many people don't like knockoffs, but here I feel justified because this toy is probably never going to get a re-release in the States for several reasons. Happywell took some creative liberties with the design, adding ambidextrousness. It can hold the gun in both hands, and some extra details are added to the sculpt. It also replaces all of the die-cast metal parts with pure plastic ones. It's not a perfect recreation of the original Chunky Monkey, but it's close enough for me. And even without the die-cast metal, it's really solid. The figure has impressive articulation and comes with a big gun. Other things that the original Takatoku toy had that this figure does not is the fast pack armor and a clip that allowed for weapon storage. They will be missed, but I don't think they're strictly necessary. Anyways, utilizing the power of Takatoku's Kanzen Henkei engineering, or perfect transformation engineering, the figure can transform into 3 modes without the need of disassembly or rearranging parts. A robot, the original Gerwalk, and a jet. The jet mode has adjustable wings, spring-loaded landing gear, and a laser turret. Careful with the spring-loaded landing gear, they hurt a lot. The original Valkyrie toy, and by extension the G1 Jetfire toy, was a great toy that I think would have been a hit even if it was released today. I'm glad that Happywell took the risk of releasing this toy, giving a new generation of fans a chance to experience it. I just hope they don't get too much in trouble. It would be 10 years before Jetfire would receive a new toy from Hasbro, and barely at that. The Transformers Cyberjets were a line of small, highly posable figures that transformed into jets released in 1995. One of the Cyberjets, named Hooligan, was originally going to be redecoed and re-released, but Hasbro decided to make that figure an incarnation of Jetfire at the last minute, according to TF Wiki. Despite this, the Valkyrie influence is still pretty clear with the jet nose at the chest and the wings on the back. It's not hard to see why they wanted at least one of these guys named Jetfire. The G2 Jetfire has a gray urban camo and cyan blue deco. Different, but still cool. It has light piping featured in the head that makes it glow when under light. This is the way. This figure was one of the first to utilize ball joints in the Transformers toy line, and so you can get a lot of really cool poses out of it. It has pressure fire missile launcher on one arm, and a normal hand in the other that can store spare missiles on it. The figure can sort of pull off a Gerwalk mode, but it's not as balanced as the original, and it seems more coincidental than anything. In jet mode, it looks great. It has variable wings, and a silly yet cool looking back-mounted turret. I'm also really impressed that they were able to put landing gear on such a small figure. They're not actual wheels, but, still cool. Be careful about these back wings though. Apparently they fall off easy, and on this second-hand copy it didn't come with them, so I had to make replacements. I think this figure is so good that it could be released today with no changes and still be loved. The current Transformers Legacy toy line's been kind of on a G2 kick recently, so I hope the Cyberjets get some representation soon. I think the core class price point would be perfect for them. Cyberjets, we're moving, we're beating them, that is yeah. So, from 2001 to 2006, the Unicron trilogy was a thing. There were several figures that were called Jetfire during this time that came out, but I wanted to talk about this other figure first. The Transformers Super Link toy line, released in 2003, celebrated the franchise's 20th anniversary by referencing different parts of its past. One such of these references was the figure Skyblast, who was a reference to the original G1 Jetfire character, but taking cues from Skyfire, a new character design Hasbro had to make to avoid IP infringement from Harmony Gold and their adaptation of Macross Robotech. Or something like that. I'm not a lawyer. Skyblast was not a perfect figure, but it had some cool features. It came with a spear and an Energon star piece that could be attached to other figures. The articulation was not great, even for the time, the lack of knees being a major loss. But the head rotated when the chest rotated, which allowed for a cool transformation automorph gimmick. The jet mode looks like it came straight out of a top-down shooter game. The spear can be disassembled and placed in different parts of the jet mode. Overall, Skyblast is an okay figure, not great, but not terrible. As I said before, the Jetfire character had a few designs throughout the Unicron trilogy that didn't share much with each other or the original other than being robots that turned into aircraft. I technically don't own any of these figures, but I do own this. This is Jetstorm, a 2008 redeco of the 2005 Transformers Cybertron Jetfire toy.
Our worlds are in...
Stop! Now, I've found conflicting reports on this design's background. Some say this toy was created not to be an incarnation of Jetfire, but as a new character named Dreadrock. Other sources I found say this toy was always intended to be Jetfire, but the Japanese side of the company turned him into the new character of Dreadlock for the Galaxy Force anime. I don't know. Like many toys of this era, this figure is big and chunky. Articulation is okay. He has joints in all the place you would want, but the bulky body makes dynamic posing a little awkward to achieve. What really weighs down this figure, pun not intended, is the backpack. The backpack contains electronics for the Cyberkey power gimmick, which unfortunately is broken on my figure. The electronic components are so heavy though that it makes the figure want to fall over pretty easy. I can only imagine it would be worse if I put batteries inside. The figure can kind of transform into a Gerwalk mode, but it feels loosely held together. However, the backpack becomes back-mounted cannons. In jet mode, the figure becomes a large cargo jet. While this figure is cool, it doesn't really feel like Jetfire to me. It feels like a different character, which it very well be. From reading online, I know a lot of people at the time were hoping to see a new Jetfire toy that was more faithful to the original design, and they would soon get their wishes answered. The Titanium series of Transformers figures reintroduced die-cast metal parts, but apparently the toys were not great. The Jetfire figure is apparently one of the better ones, but it still has some flaws. This design is pretty sick, but it's not really Jetfire other than the collars. Who's Strikefire? The plastic quality is good, and the metal parts give the figure some really good weight. The backpack is also made from die-cast metal, which makes it both durable and heavy. It attaches to the back via a peg that's slightly too short, meaning it falls off really easily. Another weird design is the knees. The knees are ball jointed, which is great, but there's no cut on the back of the knees, so they can only bend like 10 degrees, making them practically useless.
Look, this is sitting and this is standing. I'm standing.
The jet mode is really awesome though. It looks like something that came straight out of Star Wars. Stay on target. Stay on target. I don't know. The figure does come with a stand, but it has no way of supporting the figure. It's literally a slab of plastic. Overall, the Titanium series Jetfire is not great, but it's not terrible. I really love this figure personally, but I would only recommend it to you if you really like the way it looks. And I mean really like the way it looks. Luckily, that same year, Hasbro released the Classics line Jetfire figure. This figure would be the first of many attempts to marry the Jetfire Valkyrie and Skyfire cartoon designs into one single being. Apparently the toy was really well received at the time and would influence many Jetfire figures going forward, and I can definitely see why. The articulation, while only okay by today's standards, was much better than that of the Titanium series figure, and made up for it with some fun gimmicks. The weapons on the arms are spring-loaded, and the boosters on the back along with these weapons could be removed like on the original Jetfire toy. The Valkyrie looking helmet can be removed, revealing a Skyfire inspired head. However, to accommodate this helmet, they had to make the head really small. Any Sochaku Henshin fans here? I think this gimmick also led to the way the head lasers stick out a little too far from the helmet. A little weird looking for my taste. One of the coolest gimmicks though is that the back boosters actually had a spring-loaded transformation gimmick where they could turn into shoulder-mounted cannons. However, this particular gimmick also led to the figure's biggest flaw, as the weight and size required to make this work made the figure very back-heavy, and combined with the tiny feet, made the figure really easy to topple over. The transformation of this toy can be done without removing any of the armor, which I think is a cool touch. Unlike the titanium figure, this figure could more convincingly achieve a Gerwalk mode, while still allowing for the use of most of its gimmicks. The jet mode is a little more chunky, but I still like it. Decepticon badges, what the? While I think the Cyberjet figure is still more what I was looking for in a budget Macross Valkyrie figure, I cannot deny that this figure is a ton of fun. I highly recommend it. So, by this point you might be wondering, why am I even looking for a budget Macross Valkyrie in the Transformers toy line? Isn't there technically an officially licensed budget Macross Valkyrie figure that's already been on the market for a long time now? Why, yes, you must be talking about this, the Toynami Robotech Veritech Fighter. This figure definitely exists. To cause me pain. In 2006, Toynami first released this 1/100 scale figure for $20. In Transformers terms, this was the price of a Voyager at the time, for something barely the size of a deluxe figure. But maybe it makes up for it in play value and quality, like comparing Marvel Legends to SH Figuarts. Oh, it can do everything that I want it to do. On paper, visually, it looks like a very good representation of the Macross Valkyrie. The figure has good articulation on paper, and can transform without exchanging parts. It can also achieve a good Gerwalk mode, and the wings and thrusters can be manipulated. The figure also comes with a good amount of accessories with 2 types of missiles, landing gear, and swappable hands. So what could possibly go wrong? I don't know, Toynami. Why don't you tell me? The original release had a major engineering flaw that caused the legs and arms to easily fall off in jet mode. This was eventually fixed on later reissues of this toy. However, seemingly all versions of this toy have a problem with broken and cracked joints, meaning they fall apart easily and are difficult to pose. And you heard me right, this toy has been continuously re-released since 2006 all the way to today. Normally I would applaud Toynami for this, as I love it when toy companies reissue old figures. But here, Toynami has insisted on increasing the price from $20 to $80? Well, there goes the budget appeal. Oh, but it comes with a 4-inch figure. Who cares? Look, I hate being negative, but this upsets me so much because it's conceptually exactly what I wanted. A budget transforming Valkyrie figure. But it misses the mark so hard it makes stormtroopers look like sharpshooters by comparison. You may have noticed that the shooting location for these figures is different than those before and those coming after. This is because I was so disappointed by these figures, I decided to sell them on eBay. This is the first time I actively wanted a toy out of my life. I have never sold a toy before. I know Toynami is a smaller toy company, but they need to improve the quality of their products if they want to be successful, and so far from what I've seen, I don't think they're taking the criticism to heart. I am now afraid to buy other more expensive Macross and Robotech figures because I don't want to be disappointed like this again. At least with Transformers toys, there is a certain level of quality assurance and the prices won't be so outrageous. With Harmony Gold at the wheel, I don't know. This toy was not worth $20, let alone $80. I will be happy if I never see this figure ever again. Sorry about that. I've been holding that in for quite a while now. What else we got? In 2008, Transformers Animated introduced 2 new characters, Jetfire and Jetstorm, the only Autobots who could fly. The only Autobots who could turn into jets. Jetstorm was an homage to the Beast Machine's character, with the visor and the blue color scheme. This is Jetfire. I do not like this Jetfire's design. That doesn't mean I think it's objectively bad, it's just not what I really want out of a Transformers toy. Maybe it's the pilot goggles? I'm not sure. The articulation on these figures is mostly okay, but the hips were made weird for a gimmick I'll get to in a minute, and the clear plastic makes handling them scary. Parts also like to fall off on the figures pretty easily, at least on my copy. Each figure can transform into an actually pretty cool looking space jet. These jets can combine into a super jet. Okay. The gimmick I mentioned earlier is probably the best part of these toys, the ability to do a symmetrical docking mode. The combined robot, Safeguard, looks pretty cool, getting tokusatsu vibes, and retains most of the articulation from both of the individual robot modes. But it also retains the clear plastic, making the figure seem really fragile, and parts falling off don't help this. Also, the way it combines means the combined head is stuck facing forward. Overall, while I think the figure was neat conceptually, it's just not my cup of tea. I know a lot of people really like this era of figures, but it's not for me. So, in 2009, Revenge of the Fallen movie came out with a brand new version of Jetfire. I didn't like him. Again, just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's definitively a bad design, but for me, personally, I don't get anything out of it. I like the fact that he can combine with Optimus like in Armada, but not enough for me to buy any of his figures. Sorry. In 2016, 10 years after the last one, Hasbro decided to make a new G1 inspired Jetfire toy for the Thrilling 30 line. This is the Japanese version of the toy, which makes the weapons a plain red instead of the red chrome that I know a lot of people didn't like at the time. I like chrome though. I wish I had those weapons. The figure is once again an attempt to combine the looks of the Jetfire toy and the Skyfire cartoon character. It takes some inspiration from the Classics figure, seen in the shoulders, but attempts to streamline everything and give the figure a more traditional superhero body closer to the original Macross Valkyrie. I really like this figure, but it does have some flaws. It has good articulation and comes with a lot of weapons. These weapons can be attached to Jetfire's body or can be combined into a super weapon. The figure has a Valkyrie-esque mask that can be removed to reveal a Skyfire-inspired face, an improvement to the helmet idea of the Classics figure. The big feet on this figure also means it won't fall over as easily as like on the Classics figure. I know I keep dogging on the Classics figure, but there are some things that the Classics figure I think got better than this one. This figure's overall engineering feels less solid than the Classics figure, with hollow parts all over and utilizing a plastic that feels brittle or too thin in some places. The torso seems to want to come apart whenever you try moving the arms too fast. Same with the hips. However, in jet mode, everything is really solid. Like on the Classics figure, none of the armor needs to be removed to transform it, and the gun can be mounted to the nose of the jet. The snoot? Shoot! While I do like that this figure transforms into a realistic looking jet once again, I do miss how on the past figures the chest became the jet's cockpit. It's not a necessity, but it's something I did welcome. Overall, I appreciate what Hasbro was trying to do with this figure, but I think they could have done better. With a few tweaks, they probably could have taken this from a low B to a solid A. I don't know what those tweaks are, but I just think it feels really close to perfection. Really close to being a perfect budget Macross Valkyrie figure. The Transformers Cyber Series is a toy line that was released in 2015. The figures are simple and big, and they were mostly exclusive to Walgreens pharmacies in the United States. This is the Cyber Battalion Jetfire figure. It's clearly based on the Thrilling 30 figure, but it's slightly smaller and has a lot less articulation. However, it makes up for this by being very solid, very durable, and utilizing really bright colors. Some functions are retained, like how the wings can be adjusted, but for some reason they made it so that you have to peg them into 3 specific positions. Also interestingly, while the Thrilling 30 figure would go on to be retooled into a Starscream toy, this figure is a retool of the Cyber Battalion Starscream figure. While the head and most of the body has been retooled to more suit Jetfire, the ghost of Starscream is still in this design. For instance, this figure comes with 2 guns that can be held in the hands, but they can also be mounted on the shoulders like Null Rays. This figure has some articulation, but the biggest loss is the lack of knees. Transforming the figure You can sort of achieve a Gerwalk mode, but the lack of knees makes it really hard to get into a natural looking standing position. However, in jet mode, the Cyber Battalion Jetfire is really sleek and is really solid in this mode. One thing I appreciate is that, unlike the Thrilling 30 toy, the nose cone on this jet is actually formed from the Jetfire robot mode's chest. While I like both figures, I actually prefer messing with the Cyber Battalion Jetfire over the Thrilling 31 because of how durable and playable it feels. If you're looking for an inexpensive Macross Valkyrie toy that is simple, durable, and lots of fun, this figure might be right up your alley. In 2019, the War for Cybertron trilogy was a toy line that set a new standard for detail and articulation. The Commander Class Jetfire figure is the first of a new iteration of Commander Class figures, a size class between Leader and Titan class. It's very solid in robot mode and has a lot of great articulation. This figure strives to be more like the Skyfire character design than any past figure, with blocky and rounded off design created to be legally distinct from the Macross Valkyrie. This figure has a few cool gimmicks, such as the hands with the hidden 5mm ports, and a chest symbol that can be rotated between Autobot and Decepticon. Hasbro also included a set of armor pieces that can be attached to the figure to make it more resemble the Macross Valkyrie, but not by much. The chest plate looks cool, but it covers up the allegiance swapping gimmick, and I also think that the arm and leg armor should have been red instead of black. Also, the mask, while a nice inclusion, does not have the iconic antenna and thus makes the head look like an egg.
Stop turning people into...
After a pretty simple transformation, the figure transforms into a G1 inspired spaceship. Once again, here, the chest becomes the cockpit, and there are handles at the bottom of the figure that can be held by other figures. However, some parts of the body armor must be removed in order to achieve this mode. They can combine into a drone, but I think it's still a missed opportunity. Overall, the figure is well engineered, embodying the best parts of the War for Cybertron trilogy. Is it a good replacement for a Macross Valkyrie? No, but it's a great toy in its own right. But it is quite expensive, costing $80 originally and subsequent re-releases being $90. We are starting to get out of affordable territory here. Luckily, Hasbro had an answer to this, whether purposefully or coincidentally. That same year of 2019, the Cyberverse toy line released a Warrior Class Jetfire figure for a fraction of the price of the Commander Class figure, though also a fraction of the size. It's still a really fun figure though. The robot mode is simple, but it's elegant and exceeds my expectations. The articulation is basic, but it's still able to pull off many poses. I do question though why they use hinge joints for the elbows instead of ball joints like on past Warrior Class figures. They would have allowed for more range of motion and would have used less parts, but I don't work for Hasbro, so I don't know. The backpack takes more inspiration from the G1 toy rather than Skyfire, and can form shoulder-mounted cannons like the classic figure. They even have a spring-loaded function. They don't fire or anything, but it's still pretty cool. Here's an attempt at a Gerwalk mode. The toy designers seem to have tried to make the original Skyfire ship mode into a more streamlined jet, which I think looks really cool in the end. Once again, I appreciate how the chest becomes the cockpit. Out of all the figures on this list, this figure is pretty close to being that budget Macross Valkyrie that I want. I'm surprised no one has made a Macross themed custom of this figure yet. I highly recommend this figure for both Jetfire and Macross fans. I wouldn't pay more than like $30 for it though, and also I had a really hard time finding this figure for some reason. It seems Hasbro, for whatever reason, was going all in on Jetfire in 2019 because they released another figure of him in the Cyberverse toy line, this time in the smaller, less articulated, but no less fun, Battle Size class. Battle Class figures are smaller, but they utilize the Spark Armor gimmick, where a small vehicle partner can be split and turned into armor pieces for the figure. The combination looks great, giving the robot more of a Gundam feel. Unfortunately, the armors cannot be swapped between the different figures to my knowledge, a missed opportunity. In jet mode, the figure is not as cohesive as the Warrior Class's jet mode, but the giant cannons make up for this. Also, the chest does not become the cockpit, but given the figure's size, I can forgive this. The armor, unfortunately, cannot be mounted to the figure while in this mode. Also, for some reason, this figure has landing gear, while the warrior class figure did not. In conclusion, I think this figure is really fun and would be a good fit for kids or just to have on your desk as a toy. Make sure the armor pieces aren't lost though, they're kinda small. Despite all my complaints, I am happy with all these Jetfire figures, even though some are better than others. Not you, Toynami, you stay away from my house. However, my current favorite figure in my collection, and what I think is currently the best cheap alternative to a Macross Valkyrie figure, is not a Jetfire at all. It's not even a Transformer. Iron Factory is an unauthorized third-party toy company that makes small figures based on Transformers characters. In 2018, Iron Factory released their Cygnus figure, which seems to be their attempt to update the 2006 Classics figure, with modern articulation and using their unique art style. This is not that figure. This is the TNT-01, released in 2022. This is an upscaled knockoff of that figure, making this a fourth-party figure. Despite being a knockoff, this figure doesn't feel like one. It's 7 inches tall, feels really solid, and has great articulation. This is also the only Jetfire figure I have in my collection that has an ab crunch, which can lead to really dynamic poses. The wings on the back of the figure can be adjusted to suit whatever pose you desire. I just wish they held in place a little stronger because they can be knocked out of place really easily. It comes with a big variety of accessories, 2 heads, a double-barreled gun, armor pieces, and a lot of swappable hands. I especially love the fast pack armor, which can be unfurled into a pair of shoulder cannons like the Classics figure. Unlike many third-party figures, Iron Factory seems to design their figures with relatively simple transformations, which I really appreciate here. The figure can transform into a convincing Gerwalk mode. The Jet mode's cockpit is once again formed from the Robot mode's chest. The shoulder cannons still work in this mode as well, and it has landing gear. My only complaint is that you have to remove the arm guns and turn them around in order to face the correct way in Jet mode. There's probably some durability reason why they did it this way, but I don't know. This figure is a really good value for the price. Unlike the Iron Factory figure, which sold for $65 originally, I got this figure for $30. I know the ethics of knockoffs is sketchy at best, but Iron Factory hasn't reissued their figure in quite a while, and with the increased size, this figure will more easily fit in my regular Transformers collection. The articulation, the accessories, the simple but effective transformation, this figure is near perfection. Other than the Happy Wheel figure, this is the only figure in my Jetfire collection I bought 2 of. I gave one of them a yellow VF1S Skull Squadron deco. I still need a skull sticker though. I think I might buy more of this figure in the future to make more customs. I wonder if it's still in stock. Wait, they're reissuing this figure for $25? And they're releasing a shattered glass version for only $21? S tier, S tier, 10 out of 10, favorite figure, S tier, S tier, S tier. So, that's all the Jetfire toys I own. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this look down memory lane. I admit my perspective on these toys and what I want out of them is very different than most Transformers collectors, and I don't expect Hasbro to appeal to my very small niche and deal with the potential legal backlash. I'm excited to see what iterations of Jetfire Hasbro decides to release in the future. Come on, G2 Cyberjets. Bye!